White Sox fans, welcome in. It's Tony on Tap alongside the account formerly known as NWI Steve. We're here to talk some winter meeting wrap up. A lot of action in White Sox land. Steven, before we get to anything else here, how are you doing? There's a lot of people online that are very concerned. I will say that you are alive. You're here. It's great to see you. There are people who are worried. They're sending me all sorts of messages, worrying about your safety, making sure that you're alive, that you're okay. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that people will be able to see that you are still alive because we are live on YouTube. We're live on On Tap Sportsnet, at Sox On Tap on X, live on Facebook. All the people can see that you are alive and well, that you are just, fantastic here. And let the people know how you're doing, my friend.
Hey, Anthony. The rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. I'm still alive and kicking. So it's kind of all I've got to say about it.
There's been so many rumors. It's almost been like a hot stove of itself. On the White Sox Twitter X machine, that your demise was a real thing. There's some people out there who are taking credit for it. Do you have anything to say to those individuals right off the top here?
No.
No. Okay. No comment. No comment.
I mean, it's, listen, if people want to take credit for things that they don't deserve, if that's what they have to do to make themselves feel better about themselves, have at it. It's fine. It's really not the end of the world. It's just, the X machine. But yeah, I'm doing fine. Ain't nothing to be worried about.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Good to hear. There were rumors that you were potentially deciding to take your talents to another social media site.
There is no
truth in that.
No, those rumors are hashtag unconfirmed. I am social media-less.
Social media-less Steve.
And I'm going to be honest, it feels pretty good.
That's good. That's good. You are live and being broadcast onto social media right now. So I don't know if you're social media list or if you're just sort of a personality out there on social media right now. But for everybody who's been asking me, Steve is still alive. He's still here. He's still part of the show. We're going to get into a winter meetings wrap up. It's been quite the winter meetings for the White Sox. I don't know if we can quite crown them champions of the offseason like they were in 2016, 2017 off seasons. But we're going to get into some of the activity that took place in White Sox land today. Before we do, make sure you're following the show at Sox On Tap. Follow the company at On Tap Sportsnet on YouTube. That's youtube.com/On Tap Sportsnet. We've got a couple people in the comments. Jack is here. Steve is
my man, Jack.
Jack, how you doing, my friend? We just sort of covered some of that. You might want to rewind if you didn't hear it, but Steve is alive, so that's good. Matt Redacted is in here. Blue Sky Steve, very left-wing on tap. He wants to know what's up, loser. You're here. Thank you, Matt, for being here.
Yeah, let me go ahead and respond to that little half-wit there. Matthew, I've got something for you here. It was actually a 2-for-1 special that I picked up earlier today. Right there for you, buddy.
Oh, boy. We're off to a roaring start. Steve, we've got quite the docket here today. It's obvious that we have to start off with the trade of Garrett Crochet. Of course, this comes after your social media demise.
Wait a minute. That's the biggest story from the winter meetings, not the signing of Mike Tauchman?
We'll get to the Mike Tauchman signing. I know that you and I were preparing to do a show today fully just on the signing of Mike Tauchman. So we've got tons of Mike Tauchman content coming your way in just a few minutes. But we were thrown off today when Chris Getz went out and made a big deal. And I would call this probably his biggest deal so far as White Sox general manager, and one that he is going to be judged on for years to come. It kind of reminds me right now, Steve, of, the meme, time is a flat circle. I'm sure you've seen that one back when you were on social media, that time is a flat circle. And here we are once again. I think I was texting with a friend of the show and fellow White Sox Twitter content creator, as you once were, Steve, Nick Morawski, that this is almost 8 years to the day of the White Sox making a deal with Boston that we've spent a lot of time over the last 8 years evaluating. So I would expect that Chris Getz is going to be heavily graded in his GM performance in this deal. It sends Garrett Crochet, a blossoming ace pitcher for the Chicago White Sox over the last season. And he's off to Boston. He's shipping up to Boston in exchange for catcher Kyle Teal.
Terrible song, by the way.
It's a great song, Steve.
Fucking horrendous.
Great song. Kyle Teal, I believe he's ranked 25th overall by MLB Pipeline. Fourth best ranked prospect in the Red Sox system. I don't know if a lot of people want to hear these things. I know there's some people out there that love the prospect rankings. So we'll read that off there for you. Braden Montgomery, who is an outfielder, is your second piece coming back in this deal. He's got some tools. There's been a couple of things posted online of Braden Montgomery's game that look intriguing. And then you've got a couple of throw-ins here. Steven, I'm going to butcher this last name, but Chase Medroth, I believe, is how we pronounce this one. That's
how we're going to go with it.
That's how we're going to go with it. And then probably the best name of this deal, Winkleman Gonzalez. Just a very good baseball name. We'll see if he pans out into anything, but kind of the fourth throw in there. Very reminiscent of the Chris Sale deal, where you've got the two headliners in Yoan Moncada and Michael Kopech and a couple of other throw-ins in there. But Steven, break this trade down for me. How are you feeling about it? I heard that you were on a national radio program this afternoon talking about this, according to some sources close to Sox on Tap. So why don't you break down this trade for myself and the listeners?
Okay. First thing I want to say here is I know a lot of people, because it's easy and lazy, for lack of a better term, to draw the parallels to the last time a left-handed ace pitcher was traded to the Ginger Sox. These are not the same. For as much as I enjoyed watching Garrett Crochet this past season, and he displayed, the tools of a potential ace, he doesn't have the body of work. So to compare this to the deal for Chris Sale is just simply disingenuous, and it's insulting to Chris Sale, if we're being honest with ourselves here. Chris Sale is the best pitcher I've ever seen in a White Sox uniform. So these are not the same. The returns as such are not the same.
I thought Mark Burley was your favorite.
Mark Burley is my favorite. However, he is not the best. There's a distinction there.
All right. Just making sure.
Yeah. So, the return obviously for Chris Sale was reminiscent or excuse me, was in line with a guy that was one of the top pitchers in the sport. And this is not that as such. You get a number 25 prospect and a guy that was drafted 12th in this past June in the first round in Braden Montgomery, a guy that the Sox really liked in this particular draft class here. So, you've got a couple of intriguing guys right there. And redacted, you're an idiot. And listen, I don't know if anybody knows this, but I was actually at Philip Umber's perfect game in Seattle on April 21st of 2012. So, there's that. Hashtag never forget. But that's not why you called. The return, it's fine. I don't know that there was really any return that was going to make me jump up and down and say, oh my God, this is just great. He gets nailed it. Short of getting
I saw
a
a lot of interaction online today from some of your former friends saying that Getz was cooking today.
I'm
Was
not
Getz cooking? I mean, the kids are going to listen to this show, and they're going to want to know if you thought that Getz cooked. That's what they're going to want to hear.
from my perspective. I'm not going to sit there and say that gets cooked. It's just hard for me to get excited about prospect returns at this point. I would have probably been more excited had they acquired a young player that still had, a full 6 years of control, but actually came up and had a modicum of success at the major league level last season. That's the type of thing that if that would, if a player like that, and, I don't even have anybody off the top of my head here, but getting someone that has shown that they can do it at the big league level, that would have been the type of thing that I would have said, okay, hey, this is interesting, at least. At this point, it's all about the development process here. Names look great on paper, and I know a lot of people and a lot of the prospect evaluators are going to say, "Oh, the Sox did great in this deal." I mean, it almost always seems like the Sox always do great in these deals when prospects are involved. But the thing that I
Big
just
if true.
the thing that I just want to caution people about, and I know we've been talking about this for a while on these airwaves, um, the prospects that they're going to get back, that they got back today, and that if they do end up dealing Luis Robert Jr. at some point during the course of the season, they're not going to have the pedigree, and they're not going to be as highly regarded as the prospects they got the last time we went through this exercise. So forgive me for not being overly zealous in my excitement about this right now. They have to prove it. They have to prove that they have made significant improvements on the developmental front for me to ultimately feel good about things. Could these players turn out to be quality players in the future? Sure. Could they be important pieces the next time the White Sox win 70 games? Sure. But we don't know that right now. And the organization doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. Can Ryan Fuller help these guys continue their progression through the stages of the minor leagues and ultimately continue to develop? Should they reach the corner of 35th and Shields? That's going to be very important, but we're not going to know this. We're not going to know it for several years. Ultimately, could Ryan Teal possibly get called up at some point in the 2025 season? Sure. But time will tell on this. And I'm not in the mindset anymore of looking at these prospect rankings and saying, oh my God, we got, two top 100 players, this is the start of the turnaround here. I just can't bring myself to get to that point until I see tangible proof that this organization is able to develop a position player and someone that can actually hit and be impactful in a lineup for the Chicago White Sox, not the Birmingham Barons or the Charlotte Knights.
Well, I think you bring up a sentiment that a lot of people are feeling right now. If you've been around the Chicago White Sox for the last 8 years, false hope might be a way to describe the last rebuild. It's hard to put a lot of stock into these prospects. I know from a business sense, Future Sox has to love this. There's a new influx of White Sox projects, prospects, sort of lumped together in the minor leagues right now. Not even just from this haul, but from the past, I'd say 9 months of White Sox transactions, even probably a little bit further than that into some of the deals that Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams made on their way out. I just don't get that sense that White Sox fans right now are as excited about the latest batch of prospects as they were at Rebuild 2.0, if we want to still call it that. It's incredibly hard to sit here right now and look at these names and get excited about them. Yes, I'm sure that some of them may pan out to be great Major League Baseball players. And I guess my question is like for you, what's the timeline here? The first time I heard Chris Getz use the word rebuild was in the past week. Matt redacted in with a comment: a real franchise uses prospects to buy talent. The White Sox use prospects to sell hope to schmucks. It kind of feels that way based on the current history and not so distant, but recent history that we're here with that sort of feeling. And I think that there's a lot of angst against the White Sox organization for where this team is at right now. I certainly feel it. I can sense that people in the comments can feel it, as well as Steve here and other individuals that I've talked to over the past 24 hours and even before that. But my question for you is like, what do you think the timeline is here for all of this? Is there a timeline, Steve, when you start to look at these names? Maybe you haven't evaluated everything to that level yet, but Rick Hahn talked about having waves of talent. This seems a little, I don't know. To me, it doesn't seem like there's a plan or at least a marketing pitch with this rebuild. It's almost being done without the fanfare, if you catch my drift.
Back when I had social media, I had heard some things that 2027 is kind of the timeline that we can kind of expect 2 more years of just bare bones and hoping to try to build up the farm system with hopes and prayers for players that, just looking at the percentages won't pan out. That's kind of what I had heard. And I think if you actually look at things, if you look at what they're doing right now, it seems to fall in line with that. And I think
I was told by a wise man once that it takes 5 years to build a house.
Well, what happens when the contractor uses like really bad materials? I think our friend Mr. Redacted is in the home building industry, if I recall correctly. He's got some some sort of role in that capacity here. If a contractor uses really bad pieces to try to build a foundation and doesn't use quality materials, what does that do to a timeline there? I mean, I'm not in the building and construction trades, so I can't really answer that question myself. But one of the things that I had heard numerous times was that the impending work stoppage, and everybody seems to think that there is going to be a work stoppage after the 2026 season, that is greatly impacting how this team is going to operate for the next 2 years. So, and knowing what we know.
Are you saying that from a sense of they don't want to spend money now
Yes.
to put themselves in a position
Yes.
to be competitive and disrupted by the work stoppage? Or from a different sense, are you saying that we don't want to be the team that's handing out large contracts in an effort to maybe facilitate someone's personal beliefs on where the market is at right now? Because I think that those are two very different conversations.
It's more so about not knowing what the structure of the next CBA is going to look like, and
realizing that you're so far away from a World Series that we're not going to take any risk. Are we being risk?
We're not gonna take any risk, but also I think he who shall remain nameless is going to be leading the charge once again to get a salary cap implemented in this next CBA, and that is going to be the sticking point. I think what we have seen
just for the sake of conversation, do you think other owners are going to even want to have that discussion?
Yes, 100%. 100%. Look at what
Look at what Steve Cohen's doing right now in New
That's
York.
that was going to be my exact point. You look at what he's doing in New York. You look at what the Guggenheim Group is doing in Los Angeles with the Dodgers and the way they're structuring their deals with the deferrals. That's also going to be another major point of contention in this next CBA here. So teams don't know what this new structure is going to look like and what the baseball economics world will look like come 2027. And I think there's a prevailing thought within the walls at guaranteed rate field that we have to maintain financial flexibility for whatever that future economic world holds.
It's disappointing, but I also take a little solace in the fact that like they know that they're not going to be competing for some of these things and don't want to spend in the climate that's here. I know that that's something that like White Sox fans want them to do. I want them to do that myself, but I want some self-awareness, and it seems like there's at least some semi self-awareness with where they're at with this current roster. Some of that was self-sustained, but the second part of that I don't like at all, Steve. If I'm being completely honest with you, it makes me very upset.
I get it, but I just think knowing what we know about how this organization operates, it makes all the sense in the world. If you just think about it from a logical standpoint, it lines up with how this organization does things. And it sucks. And we're going to have to go through at least 2 more years of just sheer misery here right now.
I'm pretty sure they said this something similar to this on Bears on Tap earlier. Shout out to the Bears crew. You're not wrong.
Weren't they supposed to be a playoff team?
I thought so. The only difference between the White Sox and the Chicago Bears are the expectations heading into the season, Steve.
Yeah, and if they lose these next 4, the other difference will be the football team will have a lower season winning percentage. But we don't want to talk about that.
I'm just going back to the
post
that Jay Kuda made this morning. Did you see that one? Oh, you weren't on social media. I'll read this one for you.
Okay.
Sad how bad Chicago sports have been. This is how many playoff games they've won in the last 7 years, with some other cities shown for comparison. Last 7 years, the Chicago sports teams have won a total of 4 playoff games.
And the Sox have 2 of them.
Our Chicago White Sox have 2 of them, so they're leading the pack, Steven. Philly has 72. Toronto has 51. Phoenix has 38. The Bay Area teams have 81. Boston has 133. Atlanta has 38. Denver has 94. Tampa has 83.
83.
That's why I saved that one for last. But I've got to fill you in on some social media things since you don't participate anymore. But it's pretty depressing around here.
That's not great. It's really not great, not ideal. And boy, for a team that gets accused of having their stink rubbed off on other teams, I mean, to have the most playoff wins of teams in the 4 major sports in the city, I mean, whose stink is really rubbing off, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I might have seen an article about that somewhere.
You may have. Might have been on a website called On Tap Sportsnet.
Yeah.
Steven, we've got a couple of other White Sox related winter meeting things to get
Before
to.
we do that, Anthony, I think we need to kind of hash out a discussion that we had earlier this afternoon over the phone here when we were, discussing the return, and you had kind of talked about a little confusion on your part about why Kyle Teal, a catcher, would be the centerpiece of this deal. And I know I'm seeing some commentary in the comment section here about the number of catchers here, and I'm going to echo what I said to you earlier here. I think the idea of having multiple catchers at the top of your system from a positional ranking standpoint is not a bad thing. Given the fact that the Sox do not have a true first baseman that plays like a major league level first baseman. They haven't had a DH in, I don't even know how long. So they have at bats
You
to
saying
go
Eloy
around.
Jimenez wasn't a DH?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. He might
Was
have had
Jake
those right.
Berger not a DH?
Jake Berger was playing third base a lot.
Yeah, could have been a DH.
Yeah, he actually should have been the first baseman, but that, never mind. Jake Eater. Um, the moral of the story here is you've got at bats to go around. And there are still scouts out there, despite some of the improvements that were made a year ago, that have questions about Edgar Quero being a catcher long term, whether he is or isn't. If it's a scenario where, say, both Edgar
Did he
Quero.
make another bad deal?
Wait, no. That's I'm not saying that it's a bad deal. I mean, he has hit very well, but there are still questions about him positionally. So if he doesn't stick at catcher, or if he's someone that isn't going to be your number one catcher, if you have two at least semi-competent guys that you can put back there and using a rotating basis with being able to sprinkle in at bats at first base or DH because you don't have people to fill those positions, it's not a bad thing in my world. We're not seeing very many catchers go out there and catch 130 games. Like Salvi Perez was kind of the last one kind of that ilk that was doing that a lot. So if you have kind of a timeshare between two guys at the catcher position, and mind you, Edgar Quero is a switch hitter here. So, you can kind of play off of handedness there a little bit. But again, if either one of these guys can potentially take at bats at the DH spot or at first base, I mean, it's not as if this team has so many bats to put in the lineup that they can't, find room for everybody. It's not a problem. It's really not, given where this team is at. And again, we don't know how these guys are going to play out once they get to the major league level here. Could we see, do you see continued development at the minor league level from a defensive perspective? It's possible, but that progression could also stagnate. So having multiple options there is not a bad thing.
I fully understand where you're going with that. I think Chris Getz sort of addressed that a little bit this afternoon as well too. I still subscribe to the theory though, Stephen, that positionally we had these conversations about the amassing of talent at the corners in the last rebuild when we seemingly had positional mismatches all over the place. And you bring up a point here with the fact that you can shift a guy from up the middle to the corners in a pinch if they're not performing there defensively, and that's not a bad thing. However, my worry that I have is it's a whole lot easier to go out and grab a corner guy, less expensive than needing to shore things up the middle. And if the guys that we have currently within the system don't pan out, you can run yourself into a problem. If they don't develop the right way, do you want another Andrew Vaughn type player at first base that's just a guy that couldn't hack it up the middle? There's talk of Colson Montgomery not sticking at shortstop. You've got talk now of Edgar Quero not sticking at catcher. How many of these guys that we've drafted and tried to bring up already have these giant question marks before they've made it to the show? That's sort of a red flag to me. Should it not be?
I think red flag might be a little strong, honestly. I mean, this is par for the course when it comes to working your way up the minor league ladder. Guys get drafted all the time in up the middle positions. And as the game speeds up, as you move up levels, you find out that they can't handle it in those particular spots and they have to move to a corner spot. There's a reason why catchers typically have the longest developmental time of any position in the sport. Um, because it's a very challenging position. There's a lot of things involved with it. So if you have a guy that ultimately can't handle being a catcher, and if they have to become a first baseman and can hit accordingly, it's not a bad thing. I really don't think it is. Um, and I'd also seen some stuff that, Kyle Teal had, I think, played a little bit in left field, across the Ginger Sox system. So, positional versatility is a thing that is really important in the sport today. And, again, they've got time to kind of figure this stuff out. There's no, there's no rush for the next 2 years on this. Let these things sort themselves out. I just don't see this as a problem at all. And, look, here's the other thing about it is, you've got these two guys competing for the same spot. What did we talk about, a year ago with the thought about Colson Montgomery breaking camp with the team? And we sat on these airwaves and we said, make him hit his way, make him earn his way up to the corner of 35th and Shields. Let these two guys fight it out and earn their way behind the plate at the corner of 35th and Shields. And let's see who is going to be the one to do it. And it would be great if they both do it, because again, there's more than enough at bats to go around to get quality hitters in this White Sox lineup.
You seem very high on Kyle Teal.
It's not that I'm high on him. I mean, I think the plate discipline and the plate approach is something that is encouraging. Like we all know, I mean, the team, they had a 278 on base percentage last year. That was like the lowest team on base percentage since like the 1965 Mets. And it's like the lowest team on base percentage since like 1909 for the team. So it's been a really long time since we've had an offense this bad. And I've been talking about it, I've been bitching and moaning about it for a couple of years now at this point, that this organization has been devoid of an offensive approach. They've been allergic to walks. These are things that need to change. So hopefully targeting guys that have an understanding of the strike zone and can put themselves into quality positions and work themselves into hitters counts to do damage is going to be a hallmark of players within this organization now, and that would be nice to see.
He's not high on it, but he will tell you why you should be. That's NWI Steve here. I hope that's the case. But again, I go back to some of the why is it going to go wrong? Because that's what it feels like being a White Sox. Like, where is it going to go wrong? Everything you say sounds great, but what are we going to be complaining about in 2 years from now? And this
is where we have to sit back, and unfortunately, we have to see, have they made enough improvements from an infrastructure standpoint here on the player development side to see these things come to fruition as these guys.
I guess the real question, Steve, is, do you trust that they do? Because if you don't, you can rationally sit here and be pissed off at this and where we're at right now and just be unhappy as a White Sox fan. I feel like you're justified, but I feel like everything that you've also said here is sort of a way more optimistic way of looking at things, even though there's really no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, yes, I want to see it play out. Yes, I want to see them get to a point where both of these catching prospects pan out in some way to become productive baseball players for the Chicago White Sox. But at what point do you believe that the infrastructure changes are going to impact this so that it didn't turn out like last time? Because I've had this conversation with Besnick as well, Steve, and I don't know if you and I have dove into it as much, but I think the fact that Chris Getz and the front office right now have addressed these things as being weak spots for the White Sox is somewhat forward thinking. Now, are they going to go all in and make the right hires and make the actual adjustments? Or is it the same thing that we saw with the White Sox during the last rebuild where, okay, the money will be spent. We're fixing the analytics department. What do I take at face value with this organization? That seems to be the hard part here.
It is a challenge, and like we've talked about previously, that is the dichotomy of being a White Sox fan right now. It's the organization doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt in any aspect other than, I think you can make a case on the pitching side of it. In Bannister, we trust. The rest of the organization, though, they don't deserve that trust because they haven't earned it, and they have to earn it at this point because we are so jaded in our
the other
thought
part
process.
of this is they've got to earn it kind of quickly too.
See, honestly, I'm looking at this. I'm taking more of a long view with this. I'm not expecting there to be significant improvements here in 2025. I think if by mid 2026, if we don't start to see things trending in the right direction, I think then there's cause for concern. I mean, we talk about some of these infrastructure changes.
When you say that, here's the part that rubs me the wrong way. Sure, that's perfectly rational. They deserve some time to get the work done, but it also voids any type of accountability for the next 2 years. And so you have
we know who they work for.
Staff.
So Anthony,
I know who they work for too. So but when you get upset, when you were on social media and you got upset and you would fire off some posts about how bad Jerry Reinsdorf is, and then you come and you say something completely rational about, okay, here's all it, you can't have it both ways, man. Like, it's got to be one or the other. We can't be sell the team and then let's give them 3 years to develop this.
Oh no, you can, because the team's not going to be sold. Like,
well, I'm not saying it's going to be sold. I'm saying it just sort of voids the argument in my opinion.
That's what I talk about, and when I say the dichotomy that we face right now. I mean, it's
a rock in a hard place.
It 100% is, but this is just the reality that we have to live in.
So here's the comment. Reinsdorf, the disease, everyone else is just symptoms.
Yes,
so
that is.
By that logic, though, everyone here who's in this organization right now, Brian Bannister included, is part of the symptom of Jerry Reinsdorf's kingdom.
Oh no, Brian Bannister is the first part of the antidote.
He wouldn't be here if he was. They wouldn't have brought him in.
Look, I get it. I mean, I just think, like, what
I just want to know what direction we're headed in. Is it going to get worse?
I think.
Is it going to get better? Should people be excited?
I'm going to be honest. I think we still got a little further to sink. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we have hit rock bottom just yet. And I know that's a very scary proposition, given what we just went through.
Nostra Steve has spoken.
Something about the night always being darkest just before the dawn.
definitely doesn't look like dawn is coming anytime soon. It's pretty
I
dark
mean,
around here.
it is, yes.
It's pretty dark around here. I just don't. It's really hard to get excited when you still have all of that other stuff hanging over you. And as our buddy Nick Morowski put it's really hard to get excited about a group of prospects right now, given everything that we've been
Sure.
through.
Yeah. And I think that's a very fair assessment. And that's why I'm very tempered in my reaction to this, because it's okay. Sure, you've got somebody on a top 100 prospect list and a guy that was 12th overall pick in the draft. Okay, great. I just lived through an era where the team had 3 separate guys that were top 5 prospects in the sport, and they won 2 playoff games, which is
Most in Chicago history, or in the last 7 years.
Which is 2 more than a shitty football team has won in the last 14 years. And then, you get fucking losers on social media crying about it when you point out how fucking pathetic they are.
Will Rick Hahn go down as the best GM in this decade period between 2017 and 2027, when you look at all of the Chicago sports teams? It's a weird proposition, but
no, because I mean, Theo was still running the Cubs and they still had playoff appearance.
When you look at performance, well, did they win any?
They made it to an NLCS in 2017.
Cubs are listed as 0 in the last 7 years.
Okay, so that's starting in 2018 then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I was off by a year there.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's scary.
Yeah, it's not great. God, yow. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about that. I mean, that just says a lot about how bad things are in the city beautiful, as the Hawkaroo would say.
Do we want to get to the Mike Tauchman signing?
Sure, why not?
Let's do it. Sox made a big splash in free agency at the winter meeting, signing outfielder Mike Tauchman. He's 33 years old. He knows how to get on base, Steve. He knows how to get on base, and he just played 2 seasons with our crosstown rival Chicago Cubs. I believe his nickname is the Palatine Pounder. It's a great nickname there, Stephen. He's not from Naperville. He's from Palatine. So we've got the local product connection still strong with our Chicago White Sox here. Wouldn't it be nice if they brought Nicky Lopez back? So you've got the Palatine, Naperville,
it wouldn't
rivalry going on in the White Sox clubhouse.
Yeah, I don't need a guy that has a Cleveland Indian on his White Sox Mount Rushmore back here. So no, I'm good. Thanks. Hard pass. Adios. C'est la vie. Good riddance. Go fuck yourself.
Hey, he was Howard's guy.
And I tried to get the scoop from Howard when I had dinner with him a couple of weeks ago about who was going to be next on the airwaves with him on CSN. He's
tight-lipped,
very tight-lipped on the topic right there, but nevertheless, as Corey
Lee could be Mike Tauchman. You never know.
I mean, it's possible. Interesting story. Interesting thing about Palatine is sources indicate that my dad used to work in Palatine, so there's a little bit of a connection there.
That's a good connection.
Yeah. What are useless factoids here at Sox on Tap?
What are your thoughts on this signing?
It's fine.
Outfield a little crowded for you?
It is. It seems a little redundant in the aspect of, you've got strong-sided platoon guys in Dominic Fletcher, even though he's, a little slapdick with the bats. He's all glove. And then you got Noodle Boy over there. It just kind of makes me wonder, is there another move being bandied about here that could be happening in short order? Because, having 3 left-hand hitting outfielders on the roster there is interesting. Unless again, maybe they're planning to utilize Talkman at rotating between right field and getting DH at bats, which they certainly can do because they don't have anybody else to take significant DH at bats at this point. Like you said, he gets on base. He's got like a 12% walk rate for his career, which this team desperately needs. So that's a plus. He's at least a serviceable defender in the corners, which you can't say about several of the other guys on this roster. So that'll help. Not going to hit for any kind of power, not going to hit for any kind of slug right there. So again, for a team that's going to lose 110 plus games, it's fine. Whatever. I'm not losing sleep about it. I'm not jumping for joy about it. It's a roster spot, and it's someone that can have a major league at bat. So, yeah.
Fair enough. At least they went out and signed someone. I don't know if it really jives with me when Chris Getz comes out, I believe it was Monday, and said something along the lines of, we're looking for a right fielder. And then shortly thereafter, you get this signing, and for as okay of a signing as it is, that doesn't scream to me like we just solved right field by any stretch of the imagination. I guess I was hoping for more than Mike Tauchman, but there we have it. I don't think he's going to be the everyday right fielder unless Will Venable makes him the everyday right fielder.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I think just, come in here and have your 10, 12% walk rate and get stranded on the bases, and it's fine.
The part that you brought up, though, about, there potentially may be something else cooking here. Elephant in the room with that is obviously Luis Robert Jr. Has not been moved up until this point, unless something just happened in the last few minutes while we were talking. I feel like we would have been notified already, but it seems as if
you might have been notified.
I might have. I'm sure your phone would blow up too. It seems as if they're going to roll into the season with Luis Robert Jr. We could probably do a whole, hour just on the intricacies of what Luis Robert Jr.'s value is right now on the trade market, what the right thing to do with Luis Robert Jr. is heading into this season. But that's the first name that comes to mind. I think the one that's a little under the radar to people is Andrew Benintendi. It's been rumored that they're trying to shop him. I was sort of under the impression, Stephen, and I'm sure most people are, that his value on the trade market is not that great. Seems like a salary dump move to me. If they are to pull that off, would assume that they would have to attach something to Andrew Benintendi in order to move that contract. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities as we head towards spring training to see one of those two names move or be moved at some point before the trade deadline next season.
Yeah, I definitely would not be surprised if Luis Robert Jr. is moved in July if he, gets off to a good start for the first 3 months of the season. I just struggle to see him getting moved over the course of this winter here, just how bad he was last year, the diminished value that currently is associated with him right now in the market. And, Chris Getz apparently is still asking for a pretty high price for him. And, look, he shouldn't sell low on him. He should allow him to come back, restore a little bit of value. And then I would certainly anticipate him being moved this summer if he can get off to a hot start and actually stay healthy.
Will the crowded outfield become an issue for White Sox top offseason target Austin Slater if he's not accumulating enough at bats due to Andrew Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr. Shoring up 2 outfield spots and the recent signing of Mike Tauchman now.
I mean, like I said, the DH spot still exists, so you can plug, somebody in that spot. And listen, if you can move Noodle Boy, I'm all for it. I mean, everybody knows I think we've got too many Italians on this roster already. So if we can subtract one, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
And this is why you got banned from X. As we continue to move on here. Rule 5 draft was today. The White Sox had the number 1 overall pick in that. They acquired Shane Smith from the Milwaukee Brewers. Steven, I don't have too much on Shane Smith, but the White Sox were active this time around in the Rule 5 draft. It feels like the White Sox don't make too many Rule 5 moves, but when they do, it's always sort of interesting.
Dylan Covey.
Yeah, that was the name I was thinking of as well here. Can you shed any light on Shane Smith?
You want me to be honest? No, I can't. I think at this point, it's a matter of accumulating arms and accumulating bodies and just seeing what's going to stick. Get him in the Bannister Cats lab and see what you got. I mean, you've got literally nothing to lose. So, maybe you try a change of scenery and, maybe you find something. Maybe you can at least turn him into a reliever of some value. I mean, there's no downside.
Use him or lose him.
Yeah.
Use him or lose him.
Yeah. I mean,
that's kind of the thought process here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really have any scouting report that I can provide on it. The Rule 5 draft is, I can't think of many other things in the game of baseball that I pay less attention to than the Rule 5 draft. So, but, look, they're at an organizational stage where we're just going to throw stuff on the wall and see what, if anything, sticks. So, it's fine.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the that old quote, world needs plenty of ditch diggers. White Sox need plenty of bullpen arms. Plenty of innings to be ate up by the White Sox bullpen in 2025, I'm sure. It was not pretty in 2024, and I don't expect it to be much prettier in 2025. Steven,
I don't know if I agree with that, because bullpens are so volatile from year to year. You can have.
What is with the optimism?
It's not. I wouldn't call it optimism. I would call it realism.
Realism that this bullpen is going to be volatile enough to swing back into.
I'm not saying I expect it to, but I'm saying, would it entirely shock me if it just was like league average? No, it wouldn't, because these things happen. I mean, that's just kind of part of it. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, like the 2007 team, when they had Matt Thornton, Bobby Jenks, Mike McDougal. They had traded for Andrew Sisco. This was like the original, like, all flamethrower bullpen, and it was terrible. And these were guys that on paper looked like they were going to be decent, but from year to year, relievers are just so.
And the difference is, on paper, this bullpen looks like it's going to be horseshit.
And look, that happens the other way too sometimes, where bullpens don't look good, and then somebody makes a change to an arm slot or to their pitch mix, and then all of a sudden they start getting people out. It does happen the other way. We don't see it happen a lot of times on our end. It feels like it's only to the negative side, to the downside when it comes to the White Sox, but these things do happen. You look at Tampa Bay and how they rebuild their bullpen every year. Now, look, obviously that's a smarter organization right there that does things differently and does things correctly in a lot of cases. But, there's years where they have a good bullpen. They bring back almost the same crew or maybe make a slight tweak here and there, and then the bullpen's terrible. That's just the nature of the beast at this point. I mean, relievers outside of guys named Mariano Rivera from year to year are just unpredictable.
Your optimism is contagious. We've got a couple other things to get to, just a couple minutes left here in the show. I don't even know if I want to go over the non-tenders, but I have to say, my boy Gavin Sheets no longer with the Chicago White Sox. Wish him the best.
This has to be a tough day
times.
for you as a parent.
It's been a tough few weeks. We'll get over it. We'll see each other at Christmas, and yeah.
Is he getting coal in his stockings?
I haven't decided yet. In fact, I haven't done any of my Christmas shopping. But
you look like you're getting a little teary-eyed talking about this.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm very upset. I'm very upset. It's not every day that you have your son and favorite player just get tossed aside by the Getz regime and replaced by top target Austin Slater. So, it's rough. It's rough sledding around here, but we'll get through it. We'll figure it out. Other winter meeting news, and this is just a quick hitter here, Steven. Chris Getz is going to pitch Roki Sasaki, and you had a conversation with me earlier today as to why it's not so far-fetched that it could happen. So I'd like to call this segment, So You're Telling Me There's a Chance, and Steven is going to continue his optimism and explain to you why there's a chance.
I'm telling you, there's a 0.0000001% chance, only because of the fact that the White Sox do not actively work the Latin American market. Now, look, that is obviously one thing that they have revamped over the course of the winter. But most teams, most of the good teams that do serious scouting in the Latin American market are signing players 2 and 3 and coming to agreement on deals with players 2 and 3 years before their eligibility class. So teams like the Padres, like AJ Preller, teams like Tampa, teams that do make significant signings and do significant scouting in this area have deals in place with kids from when they were 14 years old. So, and they've got that money already allocated to players. So they got a choice they have to make. Do we pull back our money to this guy that we committed to 2 years ago for Roki Sasaki and run the risk of pissing off the Busconis down in Latin America, who really control a lot of this process here? And, that could have negative long-term ramifications for the organization if you do something like that. Whereas the Sox, they don't have to worry about that. They're so tight-lipped, and they frequently have unused money almost every international signing period here. So I wouldn't doubt it if they have nobody committed to any of their international slot money at this point here. So theoretically, it wouldn't shock me if they could make like the highest overall offer to someone like Roki Sasaki in this situation here. Just think about all the guys, who's that like 24-year-old Cuban infielder from a couple of years ago that they gave $2.3 million to, that never got above AA. I can't even remember his name at this point, but it was just like, that's so White Sox, because that's what they do in the international market. So could they theoretically maybe have all of their international money to just throw at Roki Sasaki, say, here, take all of it? They could. And then he would say, wow, this team is going to be god-awful horrendous, and I'm not going to waste the first 2 years of my career. Yes, that's more guaranteed money than I will get from the Padres or from the Dodgers. Or
could you see a scenario where he wants to come work with your guy in Brian Bannister? And
who wouldn't? Personally, but at the end of the day, you still got to come here and be around this entire shit show. So, you'd want to go to like a real organization.
I'm going to take a bunch of money and I'm going to get to work with the guy that NWI Steve has dubbed best in the business. Seems like a win-win. Get traded to a contender.
Yeah, but then
at some point.
Well, yeah, but you got to wait a couple of years for that though.
Good things come to those who wait. or
That's
so
a
they
myth.
say.
That's a myth.
Yeah, I know we're White Sox fans.
Yeah.
Steven, you did a show just about a week ago, or a little over a week, on Dick Allen and his potential to get into the Hall of Fame. That has since been confirmed that he has been elected by the historical committee. I don't forget what the official name of this, but
There's so many different
committees. But Dick Allen, largely credited with saving the Chicago White Sox organization in a time of futility and potential relocation. Dick Allen, Hall of Famer. I'm sure that you are excited about this. Any thoughts on Dick Allen, Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I think it's great to see him finally get his due. Like I talked about in the special episode that I ran with Dr. David Fletcher, who's one of the co-authors of Chili Dog MVP, and one of the guys that was really leading the charge to get Dick Allen enshrined in the Hall of Fame. For an 11-year period, he was one of the best 4 or 5 offensive players in the sport at a time when you had guys like Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Willie Stargell, Willie McCovey. I mean, he was, an upper echelon player offensively for well over a decade plus.
Was not named Willie like all the rest.
Right. He wasn't named Harmon Killebrew. But this is a guy that you talk to his peers, guys who played with him, played against him. They all say that he was a Hall of Famer. And, if you just look at the impact that he made on this organization from an attendance standpoint, in the 3 years that he was here on the South Side, if he wasn't there, if he hadn't been acquired in December of 1971 from the Dodgers, is this team still even here? Are we able to still bitch about the state of this organization as we sit on December 11th, 2024? Who knows? So his importance and his significance to the organization cannot be understated. And it's obviously sad that he wasn't able to be inducted during his life to be able to enjoy it. But for his family to kind of have that level of finality and to have him receive that recognition for what he accomplished during the course of his career, you have to be happy for them.
Absolutely. Steven, that is just about all the time we have for today's episode of Sox on Tap. This is season 6, episode 29, Winter Meetings wrap up. Man, covered a lot of ground there over the last hour, but thank you for joining me. Obviously, it was good to see that you are still alive and not just gone into the ether. I know that a lot of people were concerned. I'm sure that their concerns are now at rest, that you are alive and well. We talked a lot about Garrett Crochet and the trade that was made today. Covered some Mike Togman ground, got into a little bit of, where this rebuild is headed. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm happy to be able to assuage the concerns of some of the people out there. So that's always nice. And, to the haters and the losers that are out there, the people that, hide behind shitty children's movie characters, you fuckers will get what you got coming to you. And your pieces of shit, your football team sucks, so cry about it some more. But, Sox made a trade today. Things happened. Hopefully the development pans out now. So we'll see what happens. But we'll see where we go from here.
As we shall. Again, this was Sox on Tap. Winter Meetings wrap up. We're going to call it a night here. Before we do, make sure you are subscribed to the show on YouTube. That's youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. Make sure you're reading all of our White Sox coverage over at OnTapSportsNet.com. Follow the show at Sox on Tap. I would say you can follow Steve at NWI_Steve, but you can no longer do that because it doesn't exist. You can follow me at Tony on Tap. Steven, it's always a pleasure. White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.